As guitarists, as musicians, it's always beneficial to take a look at some information that you already have, something you already feel like you know really well. Just sort of reviewing it, taking another fresh look at it, usually allows you to discover something new. Like, for example, you're learning a song, or you have a song that you've learned a long time ago, and you're like, oh, wait a minute, is that a D minor? No, it's a D minor 7. I've had that chord wrong all this time. Or something like that. Or, do I have, how are my minor 7 chord shapes looking? Do I have enough chord shapes to get me through this song? I often return to solos that I've learned just to make sure I've got the notes right. Oh, it sounds like he's actually playing that on the D string, and it doesn't have any vibrato on it. Oh, that's interesting and new, something I learned a while ago. Now I'm a different guitar player, so sort of revisiting that allows me to sort of apply new skills to it, or, a new higher fidelity understanding of what I'm actually hearing. So scales are no different. And I recently had a patron of mine reach out to me and suggest these 2 new interesting ways of just looking at scales, sort of a new lens. And I thought I would share them with you today. Welcome back to the channel. My name's Chris. Today you will learn 2 new ways of looking at scales. You may know a lot of scales, you may know a few scales. These ideas are simply a new way to look at scales, a new way to sort of understand them, and a new lens to look at them through. As I said, a patron reached out to me with this. His name is David Piotrowski. He's been on the YouTube channel for a while, and he's been a patron of mine as well. He started to have some real breakthroughs and was sharing them with me in a back and forth, and he suggested these ideas of looking at these 2 new ways of looking at scales. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty cool. And so, we were finishing up an email exchange, and then I got my guitar out and I started looking at scales this way, and it was pretty dramatic for me. So I just really wanted to share it with you today. So I'm going to tell you what the 2 methods are, sort of put names to them, and tell you what the idea is here. I'm going to explain the benefits of each one, or at least the benefits that I experienced using these methods, what they did for me, and hopefully what they do for you. And then we'll zoom in and we'll put them on the neck and sort of dive in there and really get them on the fretboard, just to see, how they work and watch these sort of benefits come to life. So before we zoom in, let me just explain what these are. The first one is called root in the middle. We're going to use scales built off the E string. So we'll probably start with the minor pentatonic scale because everybody knows that. It's a really comfortable place to start out. Anytime you start a scale or learn a scale with the root on the E string, you've got a root on the low E, you've got a root sort of mirrored across that on the E string, and you've got a root on the D string. Root in the middle is this idea of using the middle root, that root on the D string, as the tonal center, rather than bottoming out on the low root or bottoming out on the top root, but using that root in the middle as your tonal center to return to. Now, it may sound simple, but when we zoom in and I show you how to do it, it has some dramatic effects. So I'm excited about that. The second one is really posed as a question. What's the difference between a scale and a scale pattern? What is a pattern a scale? Is a scale a pattern? What's the difference? Answering that question and finding out what the difference is also sort of refocuses you on the scale itself rather than the pattern of notes, right? Rather than just the dots on the neck in the diagram, and focuses you back in on what the scale sounds like. So those are the benefits. Those are the 2 ideas and the benefits they bring. Let's zoom in and I'll show you how they work. Okay, what are these ideas? Root in the middle, scales versus patterns. Let's get them on the fretboard and start figuring out what's going on. The first one we're going to talk about is root in the middle. We're going to use the A minor pentatonic scale. Because it's a safe scale. We all know it. It's easy to see. It's only got 5 notes. It's a great bed for new information or new point of view. Whenever you learn a scale on the E string, in other words, the root is on the E string, this low E string. You have a root on the bottom here on the E string. You've got a second root 2 octaves up on the high E string. And you always have a root here on the D string. No matter what scale you learn, harmonic minor, major, it doesn't matter, right? You always have this root on the D string. Now you can do this exercise with a root on any string, but I'm doing it on this one just to get all the noise out and just keep us focused in one place. Okay, so the root in the middle. This idea simply states, use this D string as the place you start and end the scale, which allows you to go below the root and go above the root, and I'll show you how it works. The easiest way is to just start here, go up, come down, go past it, and then return. Sounds like this. Now, subtle, but it's different, because what you're hearing here is the scale around a tonal center that has notes below it in pitch and notes above it in pitch, and that's different from this. The root is your lowest note. There's nowhere else to go, right? You've stopped here, that's the root. Everybody off the bus, the root's over, right? We're done. With the root in the middle, you've got notes below that you can phrase to. So another way of expressing this is just phrase around in the scale and return to this center root. Interesting. It's very, very subtle, but what happens here is the root becomes a buoyant center rather than the very bottom or the very top, right? Instead of this or this, you've got this root in the middle that allows you to go below and above. And it becomes this buoyant center. It's a very, very cool thing. It's subtle, but it's interesting, right? Let's try it with the major scale. Here's our major scale. A major through 2 octaves, again, root on that E string. Our buoyant center, our root in the middle is this D string. Now it's a little more sophisticated sounding than the pentatonic, but now check this out. It's different. It's subtle, but it's different. That buoyant center allows you to express notes below the root, come back to the root, go above the root, below, come back in. It's like this more elastic center, which allows your ear context to the root, to that tonal center, from below in pitch as well as above in pitch. It's a subtle difference, but it's very dramatic. Okay, the next one is, what's the difference between a scale and a pattern? Let's go back to our minor pentatonic scale. Right? There it is through 2 octaves, root on the E string. We've got our tonal center here. We've got this. When you learn this scale, you probably learned it like this. Right? Because you've got these 2 notes on the E string, so you might as well put them up here. But that's really the scale plus another note, right? When you end on this note, you're up in the air. Where's the resolution? Where's the tonal center, right? So the pattern includes this note here, but the scale ends here. Here's a very good demonstration of that. We're going to go to the next pattern. Right? Now just listen to that. We've got our tonal center here. Right? Listen to this scale. Where is it? I don't hear it. Right? There's no gravity. There's no gravity at all. This is a pattern of notes that are all from the A minor pentatonic scale, but they are not the scale. These are the potential notes from that scale that I can play in this position, but the scale is right here. Now listen to when I express the difference between a scale and a pattern. Now you can hear the scale again, right? There it is. The scale's inside the pattern. Here's another example. Go to that next third sort of pattern for the pentatonic scale. When I start here and end here, listen how sort of suspended and unresolved this pattern sounds. Well, where am I? It doesn't sound like I am anywhere. The scale inside this pattern is right here. Right? It really relies on knowing where that root is, playing through the pattern, but paying attention to the scale inside the pattern. These two methods really get the sound in your ears, right? So that you're not just using your hands and your eyes, but your ears are involved. And that basically gets that scale inside it internalizes it. And when you're expressing the scale inside the pattern or using that root in the middle to anchor yourself in the sound of that tonal center, your scales become more useful and more expressive. Okay, there you go. Two new ways to look at scales, right? That root in the middle puts the buoyancy, the tonal center in the middle where you can sort of go below it, come back through it, go above it, come back through, and use that center point as more of a buoyancy to express the tonal center, right? Rather than falling all the way down the scale and landing on the root and going plop, or climbing all the way up the scale and ding, you're done, right? Using that center root allows a little more buoyancy, and I feel like it really allows that scale to get inside your ears, which is exactly where they belong. I find that just fascinating. And the second one, scales versus patterns, right? Those scales are inside the patterns. And you saw with that pentatonic scale, specifically the second and third pattern for the scale, contains the scale in a whole different way. And really understanding that and making sure you know where that scale sort of starts and ends and using that sort of root as your buoyant tonal center allows the pattern to remain as potential and the scale to remain as the tonal center, which is really what you want. You want to differentiate those two things: pattern, potential, scale, tonal center. Okay, I've tabbed all these out. Those are on Patreon. Head on over there if you'd like to grab the tabs. That's in the description below. That's also a great place to support the channel if you're in the mood. If what I do resonates with you and you'd like to support the channel, I thank you in advance. I can't think of anything else I'd rather do with my time than take my experience and share it with you here. Okay, root in the middle. What's the difference between a pattern and a scale? Take a scale that you know, maybe it's the minor pentatonic scale, and apply these ideas. Give it a couple of days. Just do these two ideas with any scale that you already know and see if it starts really cementing the ideas and the sound of the scale in your head, which is really when they become more beneficial. Okay, hope you enjoy this. I'll see you next time.